With this slideshow, we return to the Acropolis in Athens and the Parthenon. Um, I just want to point out on the map on your left, there are several buildings that are on the Parthenon, or on the Acropolis, I'm sorry, the high city. And it's the Parthenon, which I'll continue to talk about today. But then there's the Erechtheion and the Propylaea, which are two more buildings I'm going to discuss in the future. But let's stick with the Parthenon right now, dedicated to the patron deity of Athens, Athena Parthenos. Once again, Parthenos means of virgin birth, because she was born out of Zeus's head after he ate her mother, Metis. He made love with Metis. She got pregnant, and fearful of her offspring, he ate her, but then somehow Athena was born out of his brain, of all things. But in any case, she is the patron deity of the city. And so we're going to talk about that large structure there on the top right. We've talked about it before. And we've talked about the pedimental sculptures. And those in the upper right are that area in the green. Now, the pedimental sculptures deal with the Athena, basically. It shows how she became, first of all, it shows her birth that I just described, and then also how she competed with Poseidon to become the patron deity of the city. So those are in the pediments, and I showed you this before. The majority of those are in the British Museum. Then there is the metope, which is right below them in the pink on the upper right, and then the frieze. Now, this is quite interesting because these metopes are separated by triglyphs, as we see on the left. The triglyphs, just these three lines, and then the metopes can change with release sculptures in each. This is an example of how the Doric order works, and as you can see from the column capitals, this is the Doric order. But the Parthenon does something interesting, and that is that it incorporates then an Ionic frieze, it's called. So it should have been used in the Ionic order. And that's a continuous frieze, and in this case around the interior of the cella of the building that holds the statue of the deity. We can see here the Ionic frieze is that second one in the back. The metopes are the first ones there, right underneath the pediment. And on the bottom, it shows the detail of that frieze. But I'm going to come back to that in a different lecture. I want to talk about the metopes in this lecture. Now, remember that the pediments dealt with the birth of Athena and how she became the patron deity of Athens. Then we will go down to these metopes, and these are going to show us there's four different sides to the temple, and unlike the pediments are stuck just to the front east and the back west, but these go around the whole building. On the exterior, once again, the Ionic frieze is on the interior. And here we see a reproduction of them. I like to point this out just to show you that these were painted, and they were painted in bright garish colors, but it would have helped them be seen from below. And here is a diagram showing you a bunch of different ones and where they are located, etc. You can see how much the British Museum has, or how many the British Museum has. The subjects around this are all metaphors for the Persian Wars, which the Athenians had just won. And remember that when the Persians came in, they destroyed the old temple on the Parthenon. So the Athenians formed the Delian League and used some of its money to rebuild the temple. And they would put up these wonderful sculptural elements with it. Once again, the architects of the building are Ictinos and Callicrates, but the sculptures are done by Phidias. We're not going to, and today I will talk about these metopes, and which we can see are in the outlined area here. And they, as I said, they have to do with four battles. A battle with the Amazons, a battle with the centaurs, and a few others. These are all metaphors, mythological stories that are metaphors for the Persian wars. We also get on one side the deeds of Heracles, and which we can see reconstructed, some of them reconstructed on the right, and then shown what's preserved on the left. But in any case, this is what the ones we should focus on here. Right, there's the Gigantomachy, which is the battle with the giants. The Greeks versus the Amazons. Now, the Amazons are these mythical female tribe that they're used as a metaphor here for the Persians. Mazo means breastless. Mazo, like a mastectomy, right, is a cutting of the breast, the ecto of the mazo. Mazo, as the alpha there is, or the A is what's called an alpha privative. And the Amazons were called the Amazons because they were warrioresses, and they were said to have cut their breasts off so they could shoot their bow and arrows better. And then the other ones show the Trojan War and battle with the centaurs. And I'm sorry, I misspoke before. The deeds of the Heracles were at actually at Olympia, but Phidias did these, and he was chosen to do the ones for the Parthenon as well. And all four are metaphors for civilization or reason going against barbarity. And so here we see, this is between the Lapiths and the centaurs. The Lapiths were just a mythological group of people, lived way back when, and they're here fighting the centaur, half man, half horse. And here there's being defeated by the centaur, who is missing his head, but he has this nice sort of lion skin cloak over his left hand. His right hand must have held some sort of weapon that is now missing, and he is about to descend on to the Lapith. Once again, these are just humans, and we're not going to look at every one of them on all four sides. We'll just focus on the Lapiths. But every Athenian would have seen this as a metaphor for how the Athenians fought the Persians. Here's another one. This is quite famous one, where the Lapith on the right is engaged with the centaur, and we get a close-up of his face on the right. And you can see here that the centaurs are made to look very brutal and wild. And he's holding the Lapith by his neck with his left hand, and his right must hold some sort of weapon in it. And the Lapith tries to push him off. Notice the muscularity in the male forms here, and the detail of the hair on the centaur's face. And remember that these would have been seen from quite a distance, but they cast good shadows, and show that the emphasis on the ideal male form that the 5th century Greeks so desired. Here is another interesting one, where here the Lapith, the man, is about to kill this centaur. Now, they cross each other, and this stance, I want you to know, it's called chiastic, because it replicates the Greek letter chi, or cross. So they cross each other with their legs, and they engage with the Lapith's left hand, but he tries to pull away. So there's a wonderful tension in this sculpture of the bodies fighting, but then pulling against each other. And the muscles really, flex in this, and are tense in this moment where the centaur is about to be killed. And notice that Phidias is able to make this, emphasize the nude body by putting it against a cloak with many folds in it, which will make the body stand out in the sun, in the open air where it first was. And also, it shows this, the moment right prior to the death of this centaur. And so it's full of action, but right before the killing is being done. Here's another example of that. This Lapith here is leaning on the back of a centaur whose face emotes his pain and suffering and fear of death. But notice also that the bodies can be shown in three-quarter views, and the sculptor Phidias is very good at showing the body turn and making it look naturalistic, even idealistic, i.e., showing the perfect male body, fit, strong. Put it this way, Greeks didn't go around fighting naked, but they're shown doing that so the sculptor can emphasize the body, and the male body being preferred at this time in Athens is being emphasized. Here is another one. This situation, however, is reversed from what we had before. Here, the centaur is about to kill the Lapith. Once again, he's missing his right arm, so we don't see what weapon he has, but he's holding this Lapith by the head, and he's about to cut his head off or stab him or something, and he's pushing the centaur away. Once again, notice that the Lapith's body turning three-quarters. The legs are almost in profile, but the torso almost frontal, and it looks very realistic there, and it shows his muscles standing out once again against the background of these deep folds, and so. This on the Metopes, these battles. In this case, the Lapith and the centaurs, but other ones with the giants and other ones with the Amazons, were metaphors for the Greeks fighting the Persians, and everybody would recognize that as such. Keep in mind that above them in the pediments was shown the birth of Athena, and then how she competed with Poseidon to become the patron deity of Athens. So we have that mythological story of pertaining to Athens in the pediments. We go down to the Metopes and we get 4 stories of various battles, which are references to the Persian wars that the Greeks had pulled off a David and Goliath victory, against, and were able to preserve their democracy. And by the way, they would believe that it's because they were in a democracy that they were able to defeat the most powerful empire on the world that they knew on the planet. It was a really David and Goliath victory. And they thought that was because they had a democracy and everybody was fighting as a free man. It's, sort of strange for us to believe, but, in antiquity, and the Persians did this a lot, they would conquer countries and then they would take their armies and make their armies fight for them. So one of the things we learned, for example, is that, there could be Egyptians and people of other languages and cultures fighting for the Persians because they were conquered. And it just created language problems as well as just, loyalty problems. But the Athenians were fighting for their own city, and so they would say because they were free, they fought better than did the Persians. So here we have the Metopes, and in the next lecture, I will talk about the Ionic frieze, which deals with the actual procession and festival that happened around the Parthenon. So once again, we go from the deities on the very top to mythology in the Metopes, and then to actual human events in the on the interior what's called ionic freeze. And I'll pick up with that in the next lecture.